Hello, and welcome to the Black Bridge Mindset Podcast, where culture, entrepreneurship, and business intersect to fuel inspiration. This podcast celebrates the power of diverse voices shaping the future of business. So, whether you're building a business, breaking barriers, or just looking for some serious inspiration, you're in the right place. The Black Bridge Mindset Podcast is hosted by your three favorite best friends, Mike, Ken, and CJ. So now sit back, relax, and absorb the gems being dropped on you by today's special guest.
So, how's everybody doing? How's your weekends? How's the week here in Chicago? We finally got some sunny weather. It's been storming. Trees have been uprooted. My back deck looks a hot mess because the storm has blown any and everything onto it. But not
Mm.
complaining because we are ready to go outside and show out for the next 3 months because that's all we get. And then after that,
I'm sure you are. You have good reason to.
yeah, I've had a lot of good news the last couple of days. Not going to share it with everybody. Y'all know what I'm talking about, but it's great news on some business acquisitions that may happen within the next 60 to 90 days. Who knows? Hopefully everything goes well. But of course, if those happen, you'll definitely hear me bragging about those. So life is good. Can't complain. Smiling and
Okay, entrepreneur.
trying. Blackpreneur. Is that a word? I just made it up.
It is now.
I does what I can. Yeah.
All good here. Went to the arts fest. I got out and enjoyed some kind of nice weather. Actually, it was the best night to go because it's supposed to rain again at some point this weekend, but not much here. I started work, and that's pretty much it. I'm finally getting to a point where I can live my life and not work all the time, like we discussed. But yeah, things are okay. And I finally got my backyard and front yard looking the way that I want, flower wise, plant wise. So that'll last for the summer.
I can't wait to come walk through them next week.
Listen, you'll mess around to be on the next Greyhound back to Atlanta if you mess up my charcuterie.
You're gonna put those plants. I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
You'll be hoboing your way back to the GA if you mess me up.
I'm jealous that you're going to be hanging out next week.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hanging out in Columbus next week. I feel like it's been a minute. But things are good here in Atlanta. That's the same thing that you guys just said. The weather has broken, and the plan is to be outside for this summer, despite the fact that it's already hot and humid. That's okay.
Right.
That's totally okay. Now I think at pretty much any point in history, now is the time to be outside celebrating life. And like Mike said earlier, letting our soul glow. Yeah, looking forward to the summer. It's going to be a good one.
Look, I need you
Why-
to find out when that Mimosa Festival is that we tried to go to.
100%, we can make that happen. There's always a
Right.
festival. As a matter of fact, they got they're displaying the World Cup down here in the park close to my house, like near where the hotel is. So they got all that blocked off. They got big screens, speakers. They got DJs. They got food trucks and pennies and all that stuff. So,
You all the host?
yeah, we are hosting.
Yeah, they are. Do you guys watch soccer or football?
I don't watch typically, but I watched a little bit last night. We after the festival, we went to a couple bars and they had it on in there, so I kind of got into it while I was having a beer, but not necessarily not that kind of football. NFL, yes.
Well, of course, yeah. And I know our guest is waiting, but just real quick. So I have, all my other friends in Columbus, they all watch soccer. And so they were texting last night, like, America is on playing whomever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? After volleyball, when I got home, I was like, let me turn it on for a minute. Let me watch it. I don't understand how people watch soccer. Like, there's 70 minutes of them just running back and forth, kicking a ball, and then 10 minutes of them maybe trying to score a goal. And I was sitting there like, I'm bored. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I feel like the field needs to be smaller so they could like at least try to score goals more. But just sitting there watching them kick the ball back and forth, I was just like, I'm not excited. So, and I think America won last night. I changed it before.
When I left, I think it was like 3-0 or something like that. So I don't know what the final score was, but they were doing it as I was, not that I should be surprised, but one of the main guys that was hot last night was some black guy that I don't pay attention to soccer anyway, but he seemed like he's the true, whoever he is. He has
There's a
like
lot of us.
back-to-back goals.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of us.
you know what? That's a conversation for another day. We going off tangent.
All right. Well, let's get back on tangent. And if you want to
Yep,
introduce our guest for today, that'd be great. Thank you.
absolutely I do. Before I even get into the introduction, I've already mentioned to her, but we definitely have to thank our guest for agreeing to be on the show, because I just reached out to her on a whim and she responded within the next 24 to 48 hours, and we just started engaging in a conversation, and here we are today. So I'm very happy to have our guest on today. Today's episode brings together two powerful stories of creativity, healing, and purpose-driven entrepreneurship. Together, these two stories highlight what happens when creativity meets purpose and when personal healing becomes a pathway to helping others heal too. First, we have Beck Boards, a Columbus-based charcuterie brand born from a moment of deep personal grief. What started as one woman's way of slowing down and finding beauty in the smallest details has grown into a full-fledged business offering curated charcuterie boards, grazing tables, and even a mobile charcuterie cart. Every board is crafted with intention, designed to bring people together, elevate everyday moments, and create meaningful experiences through food. And if that wasn't enough, our ultimate entrepreneur is also a licensed clinical psychologist whose work is rooted in authenticity, cultural awareness, and emotional healing. She earned her doctorate of psychology from Wright State University School of Professional Psychology and has dedicated her career to serving diverse communities across Ohio. Inspired early in life by family members who struggled with mental illness in silence, she now uses an integrative, holistic, and strength-based approach to help people live the lives they truly deserve. Gentlemen, please and salute and welcome Miss Maria Houston Beck.
Welcome to the show.
Yay.
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you. I need a copy of that intro. Thank you.
We do our research.
I see. I am impressed.
Welcome to the show. And again, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really don't take these opportunities for granted, so it is a privilege to share some space with you all this morning.
Yeah, same here. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
So before we dig in, I'm curious, had information about both of your businesses. Would you like to focus on one first and then focus on the other, or just jump in with both at the same time?
We can jump in with both. Next month, yes, July, I will be 12 years post-doctorate. So I have certainly been in that field for some time. And so I know that pretty well and, have served in different capacities. And the charcuterie business is my newest baby, if you will. But yeah, we can go back and forth or whatever feels, just kind of genuine.
All right. Well, since you've been a psychologist, I think you said 12 years. Let's
Yep.
dive into that. Like, what made you want to become a psychologist?
Yeah, it's funny because as CJ, as you were reading my bio, I was actually picking up on sort of a common theme in my life or about me. And for me, a lot of things are personal and professional. I typically find that I like to integrate a lot of different parts together. And so, real quick story, born and raised here in Columbus. I am proud to say, I'm a local girl. I went to a Columbus Public School, the Eastmore Academy, did my undergrad at University of Akron, spent some time in Chicago, but then completed my doctorate, as mentioned, at Wright State. So I represent Ohio, and I'm proud of that, and especially the city schools district, because we got some good folks that have come out of that system. But I was a student athlete, always have been. And Mike, you were talking about volleyball earlier. That's my love as well, in addition to basketball.
Okay.
But
you talking to some volleyball players.
I know.
Oh yeah.
Next time Ken and I are in Columbus, we may have to get together and do a little pickup game. And
Yeah,
CJ,
for sure.
yeah.
I'm always trying to find a team to do tournaments. There's this one, it's called like All Day. It supports all-timers. And so you play volleyball like all day as a tournament. So I typically pull people together for that. But anyways,
Oh, cool.
So as a student athlete, we had a teacher at my high school, and he had taught this preliminary kind of psychology course. He also had this comfy couch in the back of his classroom. And so, study hall, athletes sometimes, we would go hang a little nap or something in Mr. Tompkins' class. So I don't know. I think we might have had a game or a meet or something. They made me run track in the off season just to stay in shape. But I was like, all we do is run. But anyways, so I'm in the class getting ready to take my nap. Kids don't do this. But so he's showing this video of who we know as Sigmund Freud and this woman kind of in this therapy space. And I could not go to sleep. I was so intrigued and so interested. I couldn't even really spell psychology at the time. I was like, is it the O or the G? Where, how does that fit together? So I talked to him about the field in general. I go home and talk to my parents. Now, my father, he was born and raised in Alabama, but family moved here to Columbus. So, got some of those southern roots. And he's like, oh, yeah, we got a bunch of crazy people in our family. And at 16, I just didn't really understand what that meant. And I asked more and more questions. And I actually learned that my grandfather's sister died by suicide on the west side of Columbus. So at 16 years old, trying to understand this thing called PTSD and CPS, involvement in domestic violence, I continued to ask questions and research. And it sounds a little cliche, but quite honestly, from that moment, I really never looked back. I wanted to be able to help people through those tough times because especially in the Black community, it's like you take it to the altar or you keep it between the front and the back door. And so I learned that my aunt was suffering in silence. And so I said I didn't want anyone else to feel as though, it wasn't physical, it was something mental that they were struggling with and that they had to keep it and deal with it alone. So even as a student athlete, as I'm getting recruited and, they're bringing up the question, what do you want to study? I knew right off the bat it was psychology. You couldn't tell me any different. And I'm really grateful and blessed that as I started taking the classes, I was just as interested. But it really has become my life's work, to help at least one person, one family to feel like they don't have to deal with these mental challenges alone. So that's how I, long story short, really became a psychologist. And I liked school. I was a bit of a nerd and I had wonderful mentors and coaches and parents that really fostered, my interests and love for school.
I love it. I have two questions. I don't know which order to ask them in. So here we go. What lane of psychology are you in? Or is it sort of all encompassing?
Yeah, no. So I was trained as a clinical psychologist. So those are individuals that kind of are meeting diagnostic criteria in what we call the DSM-5. I saw your last episode with the mental health provider. So I listened into that, which was a great episode. So I do, have worked with people with more acute disorders. I'm trained to do psychological testing and other things. But my lane, if you will, would be working with individuals with trauma, mood disorders, that's your anxiety and depression, and then major life transitions, and then also grief. I actually started my career out working primarily with juveniles. That was what my whole dissertation was around Black boys and, serving juvenile life and looking at the challenges for reentry. So I worked in any setting you can think of as it relates to, correctional setting. I worked at Cook County Juvenile Detention Center for a number of years. And I was told if you could work there, you could work anywhere in the world. But yeah, and so I've since pivoted from working primarily with that population. If you can imagine, it's tough work. Actually, at Cook County, one real quick story, I worked on the unit. It was called automatic transfers. So in Chicago, they have been, and this was a number of years ago, but trying to cut down on gun violence. So a juvenile that committed any type of crime with a firearm was being charged as an adult. So I was the psychologist on that unit. So all my boys were in fact being charged, looking at about 45 years to life. But in the state of Illinois, you can't mix juveniles with adult prisons. So on their 18th birthday, they would wake them up, shower, shackle them, and then take them over to the adult jail. And one of my boys, he was one of the gang leaders. And he would say, Doc, I don't want to do this. And we actually share, our birthdays were similar. And, it just got to be some tough work. But I felt as though if I didn't do it, who would? But since moving back to Columbus, I found myself in other administrative and leadership roles, which I really enjoyed because I got to impact larger systems. But I always have maintained my private practice so I can have that direct service. And so with that, I currently see a lot of young or professionals, men and women of color who are looking to kind of process a lot of that childhood trauma. Again, who may be going through major life transitions and then certainly grief as we're finding, our parents, even peers that are going on. So that's kind of been the focus population that I've recently been working with.
Like, I've never thought about that transition of, if you go into the system as a child and then have to go somewhere else as an adult. Like, that has never crossed my mind. Never once thought about that.
It's a different world.
And I'm sure that's probably terrifying
You
for
imagine the
any
anxiety?
A lot of my clients, they were on suicide watch. And it was, like I said, because, a lot of the providers and people didn't want to work. I wanted to work with the hardest youth to give them hope. And so I mentioned I worked with one of the largest he was a gang leader. Now, when we say leader, if you know anything about gang life, these gang leaders, like the generals, they're 16, 17, maybe 18 years old. And so he would look at me and say, Doc, I don't want to do this, and he was like the scary dude, like you didn't met, like he was the general. But he said, my grandma banged. Like, my dad is a legend serving two sentences of life. Like, he really had no choice in terms of wanting to get into the life. So yeah, it is quite challenging at times,
Yeah.
especially for our young people.
Crazy.
I could have you on just to talk about that. Because I have a million questions, but I know we have a lot of other things to talk about. So my second question that popped into mind when you were introducing yourself, and then I'll shut up and let them talk, but is how important to you was it to have mentors? You mentioned your mentors, your family, and everything else in order to guide you to where you are today.
It was everything. I mean, really tremendous. I know I'm blessed. I grew up with both my parents. So my mother and father met when they were 16, 17, 18. And my dad worked at a store. My mom came in, with an attitude, and he, threw that line out there, like, too pretty not to smile kind of thing. And then about a year or so later, so they are really my true role models and my foundation. And I'm so grateful for them. My father has gone on, and we'll talk probably more about that. That's kind of how Charcuterie came about. But yeah, the mentors, my parents, they were everything that I could imagine. I'm trying to find the highest kind of compliment, but it was people that believed in me. I love sports. And so, coaches kind of pouring into me. My mom made me do drill team or this cheerleading thing because she was so worried about me being a tomboy. And, I love to get my hair done. Not right now, but so she made me do this like drill team thing or whatever. And I was so mad, and I made it known. But I think, the coaches seen that. And coaches are just invaluable. And she saw that in me, but she also saw that I was the loudest and I wasn't scared. And so she actually used that and made me like, not necessarily the captain, but I got to call out the commands. And there wasn't a lot of, young girls that look like me in the space too. So, but I'm in there yelling, screaming. But, again, they poured into me. So yeah, the mentors are inevitable. I still have mentors to this day. I've learned just the value of them. I serve as a mentor, which is an honor. I have one young lady who actually slid in my DM. years ago, and I wrote her letter of recommendation to get into Wright State University's doctoral program.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting her this afternoon to give her a bottle of champagne because she's going off on her residency to Vanderbilt
Alrighty.
University.
Very
So
cool.
yeah. So I've received so much, and so I certainly try to give back. So anybody's like, oh, my niece or anybody's into psychology, I'm like, give them my number, just text me.
That's awesome. I love it.
I want to just ask a quick question around the stigma that is cultural, right, with Black people around mental health, mental awareness, And so talk a little bit about how that has impacted your practice and kind of what processes do you kind of employ to get people more comfortable with the services that you provide and, getting them to be able to talk to you about what's going on in their life.
Yeah. A couple things with that. I will say nowadays in kind of 2026, there's still certainly a level of stigma that runs through, particularly for maybe an older generation. My mom still is not talking to somebody else, fill in the blank. But honestly, I think since COVID exposed a lot of people and their maybe lack or limited coping skills. I did a lot of interviews during that time. But so I think since then, people have been a little more open to it. I think celebrities are talking about it. Kanye, call me. We can do some good work. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I think people are interested in it, and I think more people are going in, so then they're talking to their friends and family. And so for me, I've done some marketing as it relates to kind of the private practice, but really it's a lot of word of mouth because, like I said, a couple people are going, and so people are learning about it, like, oh, hey, who are you going to? Or the girls I go to an all-women's gym here in Columbus, and they know I'm not going to be their therapist. But they're like, hey, can you give me some recommendations, right? So people are feeling a little bit more comfortable, maybe not just kind of going out and just, finding somebody, but they are asking, close friends or family, like, can you recommend someone? About a year or two ago, I actually did kind of this social media campaign. I said shopping for the right, or what is it? I forget what I entitled it, but it was like, if you're shopping for shoes, right, you take different measures to shop for the best shoes or the best, maybe hairstylist or barber, right? There's certain things you're looking for, like a good fit. Do they take my form of payment? Like, do I have to order online? Do I have to pick them up in person? So it's a lot of those things that I've tried. Education for me is huge, right? If we can educate, one another, knowledge is power. We feel a little bit more equipped. So I've put out different kind of educational tips, and then I also offer a free consultation. So I highly encourage people, interview your therapist, or potential provider. Ask them questions, what are your credentials? Because we're not all made equal. That is the reality. And, what's your training background? I am a little biased. I won't, that's another show. But, ask them questions because you want it to be a good fit for you and it should be a good fit for them. So I will tell potential clients if I don't think that I'm a good fit for them, but I'll certainly give them some referrals. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question completely.
Yes, thank you.
Can you talk about your experiences have shaped, I'm assuming how you provide your professionalism to other participants or patients or what have you. Can you talk about, your Houston Wellness Solutions and how you took your experiences and started your business? What steps did you take? For, say, young people that might be listening, what certifications did it take to get there? What things do they need to do to become a psychologist? And how did you get the business started?
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, as I think we all do, and we learn from them. But to become a psychologist, excuse me. So I'll try to go through this quickly, but you're looking for graduate programs. And as I was going through one of my mentors, he had a PhD and he was encouraging me to go that route. I have a PsyD, so that's a doctor in psychology. The difference is PhDs are more focused on academia. So
It-
you're wanting to kind of contribute back to the literature and doing research and research labs. The PsyD is you're focused more on being a practitioner, providing services. There is research, as I mentioned, my dissertation, and you do some research along the way. But really quick, I think I could give you, when we did interviews for residency, we're competing with people all across the country. So, some of the PhD peers, they had maybe 1 year of a practicum or internship. We had 3 years. So that kind of gives you a little insight to just the focus. So before I even, got to residency, I had 3 full years of training another psychologist versus them having the 1 year. But you essentially apply to the programs. You can go right after undergrad. So again, quickly with my story, I had only applied to a couple of doctoral programs. I had a high school sweetheart, and his cousin went to Wright State, and she spoke very highly of it. And so that's where I wanted to go. And there was a couple other schools I interviewed too. I didn't get in. So I cried, bought a car, and talked to mentors, and they said, well, you could apply for a master's program. I was like, oh, well, first generation. So that's what took me to Chicago the first time. So I went and studied. I was in a master's clinical psych program at Roosevelt University, and I got all A's, and the advisor was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, ultimately, I wanted to get my doctorate. So a psychologist, if you think about the highest level of credentials. So me as a psychologist, I am the business. I'm independent. And I think in your last show, she explained, like a LPCC, you have to be independently licensed to operate your own business. Versus a LPC, you have to work under someone else's license. So I can supervise anyone, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I am the business being a psychologist because I can sign off on anything. I've been deemed by the Board of Psychology to provide, any form of psychological treatment, signing off, and things of that nature.
Nice.
So transferred to Wright State. But so you would go through a graduate program to become a psychologist. And again, that's a whole nother topic to decide, psychologist versus, master's level therapist. There's a lot that goes into that. But how I started my business, when I first moved back to Columbus, actually in 2016, I was done running the streets, I guess. So I came on back home. And it's funny because while I was in graduate school, I worked in a private practice. And at that time, I said I would never work in a private practice. Because with entrepreneurship, it was like, if you didn't see clients, you didn't get paid. So as a young, 20-some, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. And then they were seeing clients back to back to back to back. And if you could imagine, that could be emotionally taxing. So I was like, that's something I would never do. Fast forward, I get back to Columbus. And people are like, are you taking clients? Can you see clients? And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I have a good girlfriend. She's a minister down at OU. And she's like, there's this student, there's this pretty well-off family. They will pay anything. Now, that sounds terrible. But I was like, okay. Praying about it, and people keep asking. Because I feel as though I say what you see is what you get. I'm just very authentic. I'm not going to show up to the therapy space and be like, so, no, this is what we're doing. And so people felt, I think, comfortable, oh, if you're a psychologist, people say I'm pretty, humble or down to earth. They're like, oh, I could do therapy. If you would be my therapist. I took it as a compliment. But I'm like, yeah, it doesn't have to be scary. But I said, we're friends. We can't, there's ethics. But so she said, there's this student, they're really struggling. This family will literally pay anything. So because I had some working knowledge of a private practice and I'm a licensed psychologist, it was really a matter of I was doing in person at the time. So my pastors, they had an office space that they were willing to rent to me for nothing because I served a lot. That was a blessing. And then I just created an invoice off of, it wasn't even Canva at the time. This was like 10 years ago, PayPal or something. So I did my consultation with the client and just brought them in, created the invoice, and took payment. It sounds simple, but that's where I said I made a lot of mistakes, right? But as I learned more and I said, okay, if I'm really going to do this, I have to do it with excellence. And so I learned about the electronic health record system, excuse me, for professionals to maintain, your records, where I'm able to provide telehealth or virtual sessions, and then I got on a couple of insurance panels, and then, working with marketing professionals kind of to put the information out there, got a website and things like that. So, you build it sort of brick by brick, but it's taking what I didn't know and then finding out, the information that I did not know how to run a successful private practice. But I feel like I'm making it sound easier than it was, but, it is a matter of kind of putting the pieces together for people to be able to find you. And then, the behind the scenes, the processes, the policies, I learned quickly, put a card on file kind of thing. Because, no shows, it's,
Gotta pay for that.
time is valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like you took the leap and then you were just building as you went along. Which
Yes.
again, we talk about this all the time is, some people think that when you start, you have to know everything, know how to do everything. You're a professional from day one. But everyone that we've spoken to who's gotten to a point where, they're doing great things, they all started and was like, we had no idea what we were doing. We just went and did something. And as we were doing it, we realized like, oh, you need to learn this. You need to learn how to do this. And you literally just built off of that foundation brick by brick throughout the years. So I think it's important for people to hear that and understand that it's not something you just jump into and you're just, everything about the business, how to do everything you need to do. You just get started and learn as you go.
Yeah. As long as you're not breaking any laws,
Yeah, but don't do that part.
don't do that part. So I knew about that. I knew the ethics. And so then it was just like,
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
Can you talk about the mistakes you mentioned, I think, a couple of times? Like you made some mistakes. Can you talk about the mistakes and, how you figured out you were making mistakes and then what you did to correct?
It sounded like not
Yeah.
having a card on file was one of them.
yes. Yes.
Gotta get paid.
Yes. Right. You're like, oh, yeah, you can pay me later.
3 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing too, like a misperception that, especially in the kind of helping field, if you will, that we really want to help, which we do, but we also have to get paid for our service, right? And that's important. So I think one of the mistakes was what I was charging, I was just like, I just didn't feel comfortable. I was a psychologist, I was trained, like one of the feedbacks is they didn't train us like as business professionals, right? I feel like a lot of that I just got over the years in terms of how to run a business. Now I knew how to be in leadership, right? And I gained different skills from there, but being business savvy was not something that skill-wise I had. And then charging people, it's your people, it's people with these stories, and they're like, well, how much do you charge if you don't take insurance? And then I say it and they're like, oh, that's too high, But as long as I've done my market research and I understand, my numbers and my value, my people will, who can afford, I guess you will find me. But I think, what I was charging, it was just kind of like, just give me a little gas money thing. Or, I mean, that might be a little dramatic, but what I was charging then, I just didn't feel comfortable versus what the sort of standard or average, right? I didn't know that.
You think
Had
that is?
imposter syndrome.
Say it one more time.
Oh, I was gonna say you had imposter syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Imposter syndrome, I think ignorance, again, just
Mm.
not knowing kind of what to charge. I think the system, the policies, the procedures, those, I think if new people starting new businesses, if you spend time, at the outset of getting your policies, your procedures, your structures in place, it just will save you a lot of time and probably a headache, right? Like I didn't have policies that if you are going to cancel, how far in advance do you need to cancel? Right. So it's those things I think you learn with experience. But again, like sitting down, okay, what things do I need to like try to have in place? So I think that was some of the biggest things that I learned.
Well, can we switch gears now and talk about your other business, your other passion? How did the two relate, and how did that come about?
Yeah. So I like to think I'm fairly creative or have been just kind of in my life, whether it's, with my home or, clothing or things like that. So I've always enjoyed being creative. But really how it started, my father, who I mentioned, was really a pillar in my life. I was a daddy's girl, like through and through. Like that was my guy. And he passed about a year or so after I moved back to Columbus. And as I mentioned, him and my mom have been together since they were kids. And I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother who was actually also going through some legal challenges at the time. So my father, he had kidney failure. So they would say he was a walking miracle. He was on dialysis for 20 plus years. And then my mom, the average is 3 to 5, but then my mom gave him a kidney. And so he had it for a couple of years. It did unfortunately reject after a few years. And then, he passed. And my mom also has a chronic illness. She has epilepsy. And then if you do give an organ, the person that gives oftentimes has sort of the worst recovery. So she kind of had some challenges there. That's really what brought me back to Ohio. And so I say that during that time when my father passed, I didn't really grieve. It was, I think, as a lot of Black women, we had to keep it moving. My mom, I was supporting her. As I mentioned, I was supporting my brother. So I was supporting my family, not only financially, emotionally, just trying to kind of keep us, together. And so it wasn't until really years later, I found myself needing to grieve and, wanting to grieve. And then just trying to take my own advice and, and I like to do things with my hands or be creative. It's just, it feels really good. It's a nice outlet. So I saw it on social media, particularly during the holidays, because a couple years later, actually my grandmother passed on a Saturday and I was planning the funeral with my uncle and aunt, my dad's siblings. And then that following Saturday, my uncle passed. And so we had a funeral with both on one side of, at the front was my grandmother and then my uncle.
And then,
So I had experienced a lot of grief in a short period of time. And with that, with my mom, and I have like some aunts and stuff, they said, well, you and your cousin, you guys, you could take over the holidays. Because you imagine, like our family just kind of was really impacted. My grandmother who passed was the matriarch, and that was my dad's mother. And so they're like, you and your cousin can figure out the holiday dinners and stuff. So we decided she would take Thanksgiving, I would take Christmas, and then holidays were just extra hard, right, without my family members. And so just online, doing flower arrangements, creating pumpkins. Then I saw these charcuterie boards, or my uncle would say cheese boards. And so I just started making them. I started making these like trees out of like grapes and strawberries. And people were like, you're really good at this. And so I was just doing it for, the holidays, family and friends. kind of if you knew, you knew kind of thing. And I'm so blessed to have some girlfriends that were like, you really enjoy this and you should, make it a business. And imposter syndrome came on back. I'm like, I don't have no degree. I never even worked in a restaurant or culinary. Like, I know nothing about this, but I knew that I enjoyed it and, people enjoyed it. So for me, how I really marry the two, food brings all people together. It brings, right? And that was the time, like for my family, the family that was still here, right? We had to like recognize that there are people that are still here and we need to love on one another, even though there's a lot of our family members not here. So, I mean, with anything, like a date night, we're gonna get some food, your friends, or we're gonna watch the game. Do they got some wings there? So food is kind of like this thread throughout our lives, if we want it to be or not. And so I enjoy hosting and kind of bringing people together. I love people. And so, again, between my friends and family saying, take this serious and just my love for how it comes about, I've actually created a workshop and I'm going to provide my first workshop to this girls' youth empowerment summer program. So I'm going to teach them how to create their own charcuterie board while I'm infusing sort of these therapeutic topics. So healthy relationships, burnout, even as a teenager, the pressures that they're under and things like that. So that'll be like our dialogue while we're styling some meat and,
Nice.
cutting up some cheese.
Considering, how do I say this without being too political? Considering the environment that Columbus is in right now, aka the violence that happened last weekend at that church on the east side, this would be a very necessary thing. Very helpful in our community, especially.
Yeah. So it's just even with my own my therapy, like I'm out of the box, right? And I think we have to be, especially for young people and then just people in general. So I think, the charcuterie is just a nice way to get people talking, maybe about some difficult topics, but then it looks good and it tastes good. That's been one of my highest compliments is that people, they're like saying, it's so pretty to eat. But then when they do eat, they're like, it's actually really good. I'm like, yes, that's the point.
You can have both people.
Yes. Yes.
What I've
Yes.
seen on your Instagram page, it looks amazing. Like the creativity that
you.
you have and you just look at something and wonder, what were you looking at when you made this? How did you come up with this? How does this even come together? Like it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I always say like God just deposits different things and like it comes easy and I so enjoy it. Like I could be tired or just want to like lay on the couch, but somebody will give me an idea and I'll pop up. That's what happened with my Mother's Day like charcuterie bouquet. If you guys had a chance to see
Oh,
that.
man, I did.
Looking at
And yeah, a girlfriend just sent it to me. I was like, let me see what I have in the refrigerator and just create something. So it just allows my mind to escape from, as you mentioned, a lot of, the stress and just things that we're experiencing as people.
Yeah, I'm looking at your
And-
Instagram right now, and two things. One, the next time I'm in town, I would love this breakfast board that you put together. I start to say charcuterie, but it wasn't coming out fast enough. This
Okay.
breakfast board that I see laying here with the waffles and the fruit and everything else on it, I'm getting hungry right now. And second, we may need to book one of these. I gotta find it. The sip and something. I forget what it's called. Sip and celebrate with Beck boards. We may need to do a little sip and
Mm.
celebrating with one of your events.
Yeah.
So that looks fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I like to have fun. I mean, I think we work so hard, right? And life is so hard. So it's like work hard, play hard kind of thing
Yeah.
and have beautiful things.
This is the right group who loves to sip. So we will
Okay.
be there.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, Yeah, we're coming up on time, so we have to start wrapping it up here in a minute. But it looks like you have an event coming up, Color of Summer.
Yes. Again, you said you were coming to town. I was eager to learn if you were going to Color a Summer or if you guys were planning on it.
I have not heard of that, but it's not off the table. So please enlighten us.
Yeah. So Color a Summer, it is put on by First Fridays and the Now Foundation. So it is like the event of the summer. And it's a full weekend. I do have tickets, and you guys could be maybe my special guests. So I mentioned it's all weekend. So it starts Thursday. There's the Royal Lounge, which is a cigar lounge. CJF, I don't know if you're familiar, over on Georgesville Road. Yeah, so Thursday is the kickoff at the cigar lounge. People just hanging out. Then Friday is an all black, kind of outside Friday event. And then Saturday is the big event. So it's at the Columbus Museum, which is one of the prettiest museums. So there's indoor and outdoor. So there's going to be a lot of activations going on. There's a fashion show. There's live art kind of happening. And then each year they select 13 to 16 culinary artists. So who will have tables throughout the museum. So Backboards is one of the artists.
Congratulations.
And so I will, thank you. And so I'll have my mobile cart and we'll have samples, if you will. So I'm doing different pairings. So one thing about charcuterie, I think people typically who aren't well versed will go with kind of what they know, right? They'll pick up the fruit, maybe a pepperoni, a little Kobe Jack. But one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, how I love education, I'm like, try this and try these two things together. And people are like, minds are blown. So I'm putting together. So the idea is while you're at the event, you can go to all 16 tables and kind of eat what, they're provide sampling. So I'm putting together different pairings. So like this sriracha hot cheese with this spicy, salami on a sea salt cracker, so I'm going to have those different pairings that you can kind of come and grab. And so that's Color of Summer. And then there's an after party at the Renaissance Hotel. But yeah, so the time where, people come out and, it's big parties, big, summer activities.
But now that you mentioned, I have heard of it. I've seen photos online, but I've never been.
Okay. Well, this is your opportunity.
Oh,
I'm personally inviting you.
We'll make it happen.
Okay. Even if you just maybe come out to the cigar lounge or something. But yeah, I think, something to check out.
Bluestone.
Thanks.
We've been to Bluestone before, right? Yeah. That's the restaurant with the bar up front. Yeah, because it looks like one of the events on Saturday or Friday is at Bluestone. So that may be cute. But yeah, we're coming up on time. We try not to keep people over an hour, and we're at 54 minutes right now. So I really appreciate speaking with you and learning more about you and what you do. There's a lot to unravel. I still have questions and want to talk
I was
about,
gonna say.
your experience with, the juvenile detention and everything else and the transition there. Um, Also want to know more. I feel like they should have been two separate episodes, more about your charcuterie business and how you started that and what it entails in order to, get that started and keep it running. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are probably watching this and like, I wanted more details about, like what goes into building the business and everything else. So
It's a
we may
lot.
have to have you back if you're open to that to just talk about one or the other. I mean, both of them are great topics, and I would love to talk about them both at some point. But yeah, with that said, I don't know if one of y'all, Ken or CJ, want to sort of start walking us down the end of the road here.
So before we even get into this, can you tell our listeners where they can find you and your businesses, social media
Yes.
wise?
Yeah. So social media for the charcuterie business, it's just simply Backboards. That's on Instagram and Facebook. On TikTok, we're Backboards614. So find us there. And then for the private practice, we do have a social media page, not as active, but it's Houston Wellness Solutions. And for the website for the practice, it's www.thedrmaria.com. So THEDRMARIA. And then for the charcuterie business, it's backboards614.com.
And just as I'm not sure if you're comfortable giving them out, but can you give them an idea of the physical locations as well? Especially for people here in Columbus.
Yes. So actually, I just transitioned out of my office, which was on Bryce Road. So we're looking for another location. So right now for the private practice, it's solely telehealth or virtual sessions. But we are going to go back into a kind of physical location, just trying to find the best location for that. So online is available for people that feel comfortable. And I would, encourage people to try it out. Pros and cons to in-person and video, certainly. And then for the charcuterie business, I do have a commercial kitchen that I utilize. And then we have our business address, but we don't have a brick and mortar. Not yet for the charcuterie. So you simply would want to go to our website or our social media and message us if you wanted to place an order. You can email us at contact@backboards614.com for more information. If, your corporation, you want to maybe do some team building, I can come to a workshop for, businesses, and I've done a variety of, happy hours for corporations and, different spreads and conferences. So yeah, certainly reach out. The business number is area code 614-706-2085. So those are ways people can find me.
Just out of curiosity, how much of a lead time do you need to create a board?
So I like to have, or at least for a board, so we have boards of a variety of sizes, would be 5 to 7 days. But I get a lot of last minute orders, which is fine. But there is going to be a rush fee added to that. For our grazing tables, we ask for 14 days. And then for the mobile cart, we're looking at about 21 to 30 days in advance notice.
Nice. So CJ, order yours today.
Yes, Father's Day
That's
is
why I
coming
asked.
up. Father's Day is coming up. I have a couple orders for the charcuterie with the fried, with wings added, because we definitely customize all of our boards, upon request. So get the orders in. I'll be making boards and crying. It's fine.
Oh.
So the next part is where we ask you the question from the prior guest, and then after you answer that, then we will ask you for a question for the next guest. So, with that said, the question from the prior guest is, what's one sacrifice people never see behind your success?
He went deep. I think and this will lead into my question. Sometimes you, starting out, always get paid. And what I mean by that is once I, pay all the expenses, especially if I'm doing a big event, I like to pay people a livable wage. Again, I've been in leadership and work for nonprofits a lot. And so I want people to feel good about, the time that they spent with my business and getting compensated appropriately. So sometimes, again, with paying the expenses and paying, people that have supported, I have to wait kind of to see the big payout, if you will. So I think that sacrifice has been like, it's coming. People are like, oh, I see you everywhere. You're doing big things. And I'm like, yes, but, I resigned from my 9 to 5 in April. And so still trying to figure out, this lifestyle, if you will. And so the sacrifice might be that putting the big bucks, I guess, coming back to me, they might be coming down the line. They're postponed.
You get into existence.
Oh yeah, it's coming for sure. So, but yeah, it might be a little delayed. You won't see it in the very beginning.
It'll be right on time. It's going to come.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Would have figured you say time management with you running 2 businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm trying to sell my house. It's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I got a Yorkie that he's been down here. He's been good today.
Yes.
Nice. Cute.
Yeah.
So what would be your question for the next guest?
So my question for the next guest would be kind of twofold. What are they doing to take care of themselves? And if they're not doing the necessary things to take care of themselves, what's something they want to start doing?
Nice. I like it. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
Yes.
All right, Ken. You know what you're up to do.
So the next part, if you've watched any of the episodes and watched to the end, you know that we do our signature move at the end, and which is called the Wakanda piece pause. Did you see her chuckle at that, Mike?
I gotta watch my face.
Oh, you can laugh because the first time I said it, we were like,
ask you to do is hold up your hands like this, peace sign, for approximately about 10 to 15 seconds, so that we can take a picture, and that will end the podcast.
I'm gonna need you to put your thumbs away because you look like you got 2 shivers.
I noticed that, but I wasn't going to say anything.
Who, me?
Yeah, you did. You're like,
Yeah.
Me, listen, you gotta
You
be
about to
ready.
bang shoot them up.
I was about to say you may end up in juvie.
Listen,
Call her Maria.
you always gotta listen. What did I say? If you stay prepared,
What up, bud?
So
This is
let me
the
call
wrong
you next
episode
week.
to be doing that, kid.
Like, hey, Maria, so remember when you talked about...
Like, babe, look at him. He is in Atlanta, I mean.
So yes, if you want to count us down, Ken, that would be great.
Yeah, you guys ready? 3,
Check me more.
2, 1. And we're good. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome.
You are
Yes.
fantastic. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ken.
And you're going to have to charge me a fee because I need to put it in order.
All right. Send me a message. I got you.
Okay. Okay. It's
Don't
nothing,
be
it's
giving
it's
him
nothing
any-
big. It's nothing big.
Don't be giving
Okay,
him
no.
any discounts. It's okay.
Listen.
Well, tell all
you
your
don't-
friends.
Charge her full price.
Listen. You say where you are in Chicago. Don't worry about what's going on in Columbus.
Right. You're going to promote the business so I can show some love.
I love
So,
it.
I got
Yeah.
you.
I'll call you on Saturday while we eating it. Just to eat it in your
Don't do that.
face.
Don't do that. Charge him double now.
Forget it, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a
thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Have a great weekend.